Did you know that some of America's most beloved TV stars spent their entire careers performing a version of themselves that had nothing to do with who they really were? Behind the family sitcoms, the game show panels, and the wholesome primetime smiles, dozens of actors were hiding a truth the industry told them would destroy everything. Some took it to the grave, some found the courage to step forward, and some were forced out before they were ready. Here are 25 sitcom actors who secretly lived a gay life. 1. Robert Reed. Everyone knew Mike Brady. Calm, wise, the perfect TV dad. Robert Reed played him for 5 seasons and 117 episodes. Audiences believed every second of it. But behind the picture-perfect father figure was a man living in constant fear. Robert Reed was gay at a time when that truth alone could end a career overnight. He clashed constantly with the show's creator and often felt trapped in a role that had nothing to do with who he really was. He never came out during his lifetime. After he passed in 1992, his co-star Barry Williams confirmed what Hollywood had quietly understood for years. The man who defined American fatherhood for a generation could not be himself. Not once. 2. Paul Lynde. Paul Lynde was one of the funniest men on American television. On Bewitched, he played Uncle Arthur. On Hollywood Squares, he sat in the center square and made the country laugh for years. But he never said the words. In Hollywood, it was an open secret. A scandal in 1965 involving a young actor nearly destroyed him, but the studio moved fast and buried the story before it reached the public. His career survived. The fear never left. He drank heavily for years, and the loneliness underneath the jokes was real. He died in 1982 at just 55, never having told his own story on his own terms. How different might his life have been if the world had simply let him be honest. 3. Dick Sargent. Dick Sargent stepped into Bewitched as the second Darren Stevens and spent years playing the straight, frustrated husband of a witch. Off-screen, he was performing that exact same act for the entire industry. He created fake public romances with women. He showed up to premieres with female companions so magazines would write about something harmless instead. It was exhausting. In 1991, on National Coming Out Day, he finally stopped. He came out publicly, one of the very few actors from his era to do it. He said he could not stay quiet after watching young people destroy themselves from feeling completely alone. He spent his final years as an activist and died in 1994. He found his courage late. He used every second of it. 4. Hayden Rourke. On I Dream of Jeannie, Hayden Rourke played Dr. Bellows, the uptight military psychiatrist who could never figure out why strange things kept happening around Major Nelson. Perfect comic timing. Perfectly played. Off-screen, he was known in Hollywood as a confirmed bachelor, which was the careful code of the era. He lived for years with his partner in Studio City. To the neighbors, they were just friends. The cast knew the truth and protected it. The network would have canceled his contract without hesitation if the public had found out. So the mask stayed on until he died. The character he played was always confused by the world around him. The man playing him understood exactly what was happening. 5. Jim Nabors. Gomer Pyle was sweet, naive, and completely lovable. Jim Nabors played him perfectly. But his real life was nothing like the character. He moved to Hawaii to stay as far from the Hollywood gossip machine as possible. A vicious rumor spread in the 1970s claiming he had secretly married another famous actor. It was false, but it nearly ruined him, and he spent years fighting it. The dark irony is that in 2013, at 82 years old, Jim Nabors actually did get married. He married his partner of 38 years in a quiet ceremony. He had been with the same man for nearly 4 decades while the world debated a rumor. How many years did he lose pretending the question did not exist? 6. Rock Hudson. Rock Hudson was the ultimate symbol of Hollywood masculinity. 6'5", impossibly handsome, the dream for millions of women. He did TV work including the series Macmillan and Wife and made guest appearances across the industry. His agents worked around the clock to keep the truth buried. They arranged a staged marriage to his agent's secretary specifically to silence the rumors. Rock Hudson had to perform a false version of himself every single day. His secret came out in 1985 when he became the first major celebrity to announce he had AIDS. That moment forced the world to pay attention to a crisis devastating an entire community. He died shortly after. He spent his whole life hiding. He only got to be honest when he was dying. 7. Richard Chamberlain. Richard Chamberlain received 12,000 fan letters a week at the height of his fame as Dr. Kildare. 12,000 letters, mostly from women who wanted to marry him. He became an expert at performing the eligible bachelor. He took female friends to premieres just to be photographed. He moved to Hawaii to escape the pressure of Los Angeles. He wrote in his memoir that hiding had shaped him completely, that he had become so skilled at concealment it affected every part of how he lived. He finally came out in 2003 at nearly 70 in a book called Shattered Love. He was almost 70 before the world let him be honest. That is not just a personal tragedy, that is an indictment of the entire industry. 8. Anthony Perkins. Anthony Perkins is best known for Norman Bates in Psycho. He also appeared on television panel shows and variety programs that were fixtures of American living rooms. Behind the famous role was a deeply complicated man. For years he underwent therapy specifically to change his attraction to men because the stigma was so brutal. He eventually married a woman and had 2 children. From the outside, his life looked completely conventional. Like Rock Hudson, his truth came out through the AIDS crisis. He died in 1992. Just before the end, he released a statement saying he had learned more about love and compassion in his final months than in his entire life. He spent decades being told something was wrong with him. He found peace only at the very end. 9. Charles Nelson Raleigh. Charles Nelson Raleigh sat in the top row of the Match Game panel for years, wearing enormous glasses, smoking a pipe, making the country laugh. He played the eccentric bachelor for his entire television career. He changed pronouns in stories. He left details deliberately vague. It was a performance inside a performance. He could be outrageously campy, but he never said it outright. It was not until the 1990s in a one-man stage show that he finally talked honestly about his life. He described how exhausting it had been to be so visibly different on television every day while keeping the most important part of himself completely hidden. He was a pioneer who walked the line for decades before he could finally step off it. 10. Cesar Romero. Footage search https://www.youtube.com/results search _query plus 1966. Cesar Romero played the Joker in the 1966 Batman television series and charmed audiences across decades of film and TV work. He was suave, polished, and impeccably dressed. He was also known in Hollywood as a man who never married and never explained why. He refused to shave his mustache for the Batman role, so the makeup team painted white clown paint straight over it. That small act of quiet stubbornness captures exactly who he was. He did things on his own terms without confrontation. His private life remained completely sealed during his lifetime. After his death in 1994, people who had known him confirmed what the industry had long understood. He had spent his entire career as one of Hollywood's most well-liked performers while keeping a central part of his identity invisible. 11. Raymond Burr. Raymond Burr played Perry Mason for 9 seasons. Millions invited him into their homes every week. He won 2 Emmy Awards. Off-screen, he constructed an elaborate false biography to protect his private life. He invented a dead wife. He fabricated a son who supposedly died in a plane crash. He maintained an entirely fictional personal history for years. His partner of over 30 years, Robert Benavides, remained invisible to the public until after Burr's death in 1993. The scale of it is staggering, not because he lied, but because the industry made lying feel like the only option. Perry Mason always found the truth in the courtroom. Raymond Burr spent his whole life making sure nobody found his. 12. Liberace. Liberace had his own television show in the 1950s and remained a fixture on variety programs for decades. He performed in rhinestone suits, played piano by candlelight, and was one of the most flamboyant entertainers in American history. He also spent his entire career insisting he was not gay. He sued a British newspaper for implying it and won the case in 1959. He understood his Middle American audience and believed the truth would shatter their love for him. He died in 1987. His doctor initially listed heart failure as the cause of death. Only after investigation was AIDS confirmed as the real cause. He tried to take the secret to the grave. The truth followed him anyway. 13. Rip Taylor. He was a staple of game shows and variety television for decades. Hollywood Squares, The Gong Show, and dozens more. He seemed to exist entirely for the entertainment of others. But Rip Taylor was intensely private about his personal life. His flamboyant stage persona gave him a kind of cover the same way it had for Paul Lindy and Charles Nelson Raleigh. He could be outrageously campy, and audiences read it as part of the act. He died in 2019. Only then did those close to him confirm what had been quietly understood for years. The confetti was always flying. The real Rip Taylor stayed carefully behind the curtain. 14. Dan Butler. On Frasier, Dan Butler played Bulldog Briscoe, the loud, woman-chasing, chest-thumping sports radio host. He barked at colleagues. He bragged constantly. He was a walking parody of toxic masculinity. And Dan Butler played him so convincingly that most fans had no idea they were watching a gay man do it every week. He came out in 1994 while the show was still on the air. The producers never flinched. The character never changed. He kept barking and chasing women on screen while living his actual life off it. It is one of the most striking examples in television history of the gap between what an actor performs and who an actor actually is. 15. David Hyde Pierce. Niles Crane is one of the greatest sitcom characters ever written. David Hyde Pierce played him for 11 seasons on Frasier. The entire central love story was Niles's decade-long obsession with Daphne the housekeeper, one of the most romantic slow burns in television comedy. David Hyde Pierce played every second of it perfectly and won 4 Emmy Awards doing it. During all of it, he was with his partner, Brian Hargrove. He never lied. He simply did not volunteer information. He officially came out in 2007, years after the show ended, quietly and without drama. He proved it is possible to deliver one of the most celebrated romantic performances in sitcom history while your real love story is happening somewhere the cameras cannot see. 16. John Mahoney. John Mahoney played Martin Crane, the retired cop with the ugly recliner who kept his 2 impossibly snobby sons grounded in reality. He was the heart of Frasier. Off-screen, he spent his career telling interviewers he was simply a loner who never found the right relationship. He believed his private life was entirely separate from the work, and he enforced that separation completely. After he died in 2018, discussions within the theater community confirmed what many had long understood. His co-stars spoke about him like a father they had genuinely lost. The audience felt exactly the same way. Whatever he kept private, the warmth he gave every week was completely real. 17. Nathan Lane. Nathan Lane is a Broadway legend, the Lion King. Modern Family, loud, brilliant, seemingly fearless, but for a significant chunk of his career, he was genuinely terrified of coming out. He watched what happened to other actors who stepped forward, and he saw the consequences clearly. He played the game. He told reporters he was single. He evaded questions with jokes. He finally opened up in a major interview in 1999. He has since said he wishes he had done it sooner, that he could have helped more people if he had been braver earlier. Fear is not a character flaw. For an actor in that industry at that time, it was the completely rational response to an irrational situation. 18. Sean Hayes. Will and Grace was the first network sitcom to feature gay main characters. Sean Hayes played Jack McFarland, the most unapologetically joyful gay character television had ever seen, a cultural phenomenon. And the entire time he was doing it, he refused to discuss his own sexuality with the press. He brought female dates to red carpet events. He gave vague answers to direct questions. He said later he was young and genuinely scared. He felt coming out would make him the permanent face of an entire community before he was ready for that. He finally came out in 2010. He says he regrets not doing it sooner. A strange human contradiction. The man playing the most visibly gay character on American network television was privately afraid of the very conversation his character was making easier for everyone else. 19. Neil Patrick Harris. Barney Stinson was the ultimate womanizer. Suits, a playbook, and the word legendary used constantly. Neil Patrick Harris played him so convincingly that men across America were quoting his lines. Then in 2006, while the show was still at its peak, a blogger threatened to publicly out him. Neil Patrick Harris did not wait. He went straight to People magazine and said he was a proud gay man. The show was still on the air. Would audiences believe him as Barney anymore? They did. In fact, Barney became more popular. He kept the role for years after. He proved the fear was bigger than the reality. It almost always is. 20. Jim Parsons. Sheldon Cooper had zero interest in romance. Jim Parsons played him with such precision he won 4 Emmy Awards and eventually earned $1 million per episode. He had been with his partner Todd Spiewak for over 10 years before most of the public knew. He never held a press conference. No magazine cover. His disclosure appeared in a New York Times profile in 2012 that simply mentioned almost in passing that he was gay and in a relationship. That was it. No drama. Just the truth stated plainly and allowed to sit there. He played an asexual genius on screen while building a quiet and happy private life at home, one of the most dignified exits from the closet in Hollywood history. 21. Matt Bomer. Matt Bomer played Neil Caffrey on White Collar, a con artist so handsome and charming he could convince anyone of anything. Blue eyes, perfect jaw, a face built for movie posters. Casting directors saw him as the next great Hollywood leading man. He was quietly living with his husband and their 3 children the entire time. His coming out happened almost by accident. In 2012, accepting an award for HIV and AIDS activism, he thanked his husband by name in his speech. That was it. No statement, just a thank you that told the whole story in one sentence. He lost some film roles after that. A documented fact and an honest one. But he kept working and proved a gay man can be a legitimate Hollywood heartthrob in a business that spent decades insisting otherwise. 22. Vincent Schiavelli. Vincent Schiavelli had one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. Tall, angular, drooping eyes that made every character feel slightly off-center. Ghost, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and dozens of television productions. But in 1972, he played Peter Panama on a sitcom called The Corner Bar. Peter Panama was the first recurring openly gay character in American television history. That is genuinely historic. The real complexity is that Schiavelli identified as straight for most of his life while playing that groundbreaking role. Details that emerged later painted a far more complicated picture. Whatever the full truth was, he took it with him when he died in 2005. He put a gay character on American television before it was considered acceptable. The details of his own story remain a mystery. 23. Tom Villard. Tom Villard was a familiar face in the 1980s, a regular on We Got It Made and a guest on The Golden Girls. Genuine comedic energy, constantly working. Then he started disappearing from screens. In 1994, he walked onto a talk show and told the truth. He announced he was battling HIV at a time when that admission was still a career-ending confession. He talked about being denied insurance, about being treated differently. He wanted to put a recognizable face on a disease most of Hollywood was pretending was not touching them. He died just months after the interview. He was 40 years old and already sick when he walked onto that stage. Whatever fear he had he decided it mattered less than the people who needed to hear him say it out loud. 24. Bill Bruchtrup. Night D Blue was one of the most intense dramas on American television in the 1990s. Bill Bruchtrup played John Irvin, the gentle administrative aide in a station full of hard men. The character was openly gay and one of the most quietly dignified representations of a gay man on network television at the time. Bill Bruchtrup himself was out to his friends and family. The network had no interest in making it a public statement. He navigated the industry carefully and let the character do the talking. People who might have dismissed a gay character on their favorite cop show found themselves caring about John Irvin because he was simply a decent person. Changing minds quietly is still changing minds. 25. Tab Hunter. Tab Hunter was one of the biggest teen idols in America in the 1950s. Movies, a recording career, a fan magazine presence that made him a household name. Warner Bros. Worked aggressively to keep his private life invisible. They arranged publicity dates with actresses and managed every public appearance down to the finest detail. The studio knew the truth. They simply treated it as a business problem to be managed rather than a truth to be told. He spent decades performing a version of himself that had nothing to do with who he actually was. He finally told his story in a 2005 memoir called Tab Hunter Confidential. By then, he was in his 70s. The studios owned their stars in ways that went far deeper than contracts. They owned the stories those stars were allowed to tell about themselves. Tab Hunter got his story back. It just took most of his life to do it.